So as we go through Lent, we're going to walk through in kind of a thematic way the book of Job. And last week we started with the first chapter of Job, and so we're going to kind of move from there and hear what kind of happens. But to start, so the law of gravity. Who's familiar with the law of gravity? Jordy waved at me. I don't know if he... Objects are attracted to each other in direct proportion to their combined mass and inversely related to their distance from each other. Okay? Newton has 3 laws. Who knows Newton's 3 laws? An object remains at rest, will remain at rest, unless acted on by an outside force. Force of an object is equal to its mass times its velocity. And for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. There's 4 laws of thermodynamics, and anyone who has studied chemistry or physics will be at least somewhat familiar with Archimedes' principle, Ohm's law, Pascal's, Boyle's laws, Kepler's laws, the law of the conservation of energy. It is by these laws that our universe is governed. Said another way, it's these scientific principles that help us understand the way our world works. Now, of course, we're all also familiar with the rule of law, right? We know that there are laws which govern our society that, should we break them, have varying degrees of consequences. Speeding, jaywalking, trespassing, money laundering, assault, murder, all carry different penalties based on the severity of the crime and its effect on other people. But what about moral laws? What about rules for right living in the world, about how to live a good and an upright life? What are they? And who sets them? And by what system are we rewarded or punished based on moral laws in our universe? These are the questions that wisdom literature in our Bible is trying to answer. So in our Bibles, we have 3 books that primarily deal with wisdom literature, or that are wisdom literature: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. So we're going to ground ourselves in the conversation that these books are having with each other. So Proverbs is about how to live rightly in the world. It's a collection of sayings that tell you how you should live and behave so that you live an upright life. For the writer of Proverbs, if you live a good and moral and upright life, you'll be rewarded. But if you lead a reckless and a destructive life, you'll be punished. So God has ordered the world, according to Proverbs, to be just. You get what you deserve. And so you should seek to live according to wisdom, the wisdom of God's law, so that you receive blessing in your life. Ecclesiastes presents a different view of the moral universe. The writer claims that you could try to lead a good and a moral life based on seeking wisdom. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Because life is, as the writer says, hevel. And our Bibles always translate hevel as meaningless, but it really means is vapor or mist. Think about the smoke that comes off a campfire or off the end of a tobacco pipe. Ecclesiastes talks about 3 realities of life: the march and scope of time in which our individual lives are but a blink of the eye; the certainty of death for everyone, regardless of whether you've been good or bad; and the randomness in life. So Ecclesiastes recognizes the view of Proverbs, but says Proverbs forgot something. Life can be random, and there's chance involved. And so life is too unpredictable for you to control. Everything is hevel. Over 40 times, everything is hevel. Beautiful, mysterious, changing and shifting, appearing solid, but when you grasp at it, it moves through your fingers. It's like a fog you can't see through clearly. Life isn't meaningless. Its meaning just isn't clear. You should, says Ecclesiastes, live a moral life in fear of the Lord. That's the right thing to do. But you cannot control your life. And you have to stop trying to control the outcome of your living, because the only thing The only thing you have control over is your attitude toward this present moment. So stop worrying about how the ways in which you live produce results in your life. Enjoy this moment, and every moment, the good and the bad, because regardless, it's a gift from God. Okay, so does that make sense so far about what Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are saying about wisdom and about life and about the order of the universe and how it works? That's the conversation that Job is entering into. So Job is a book of, like we talked about last week, 42 chapters long. It starts with a prologue in chapters 1 and 2. It ends with an epilogue in chapter 42. And so the middle of the book, or the bulk of it, from chapters 3 to chapter 41, is dense Hebrew poetry that deals with this central question. Is the world ordered in accordance with wisdom and justice? And we often think of the book of Job as a book about why good people suffer. And the book does give us some insight into the suffering that good people experience in their lives. But the central question is not about why suffering occurs. Instead, it's about entering into this conversation with Proverbs and Ecclesiastes about how God has ordered this universe and whether or not God acts out of justice. So we talked about the prologue last week, right? We're introduced to a man named Job. He's blameless and upright, fears the Lord, and turns from evil. And he's incredibly wealthy with herds and lots of land and many servants and a wife and 10 children. And then we get transported to the heavenly throne room where God has convened the council of divine beings. And there's one among them called Hasatan, the one who is opposed. And this Hasatan functions like a prosecuting attorney, bringing charges against humans for their sin in the God's court. And so God asks Hasatan, have you seen my servant Job? He's blameless and upright, fears God and turns from evil. Right? God admits Job lives a good and a moral life. But Hasatan challenges God, saying that because, God, you've ordered the world in such a way that those who are good who are blessed and those who are evil are cursed, you don't know if Job loves you. It might be that Job is good only so that he can receive the blessings you shower on him. So God allows Hasatan to take everything from Job, his land, his herds, his servants, and even his children. And though he's lost everything, he still does not curse God. So we're transported back up into the heavenly throne room, and God has once again convened the council of divine beings, and Hasatan once again is there among them. And God again confronts Hasatan. Have you seen my servant Job? And even after losing everything, Job does not sin. But, Hasatan points out, you left him his health. He may not be cursing you just because he wants to save his skin, even though he's lost everything else. So God allows Hasatan to do everything but kill Job. So Job becomes afflicted with these painful sores from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. And Job's wife, seeing all that has happened to him, says, do you still persist in your integrity? Curse God and die. But even still, we're told, Job does not sin. Well, Job has these three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. And they hear what has happened to Job. So they travel to his house. And when they see, even from a distance, they see Job, they just break out in tears and sorrow and grief because of the incredible suffering of Job. So they sit down with Job in the ashes. And nobody says a word for 7 days and 7 nights. And after 7 days and 7 nights, start of chapter 3, this is how Job breaks the silence. Let the day perish in which I was born, and the night that said a man-child is conceived. Let that day be darkness. May God above not seek it, nor light shine on it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Let clouds settle upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. That night, let thick darkness seize it. Let it not rejoice among the number or the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Yes, let that night be barren. Let no joyful cry be heard in it. Let those who curse it, who curse the sea, those who are skilled to rouse up Leviathan. Let the stars of its dawn be dark. Let it hope for light, but have none. May it not see the eyelids of morning, because it did not shut the doors of my mother's womb and hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not die at birth, come forth from the womb, and expire? Job goes on. And we're going to hear more about Job's argument next week. But what we want to start and take from these words is that Job is certain he has done nothing to deserve what's happened to him. And in fact, we know he's right. The narrator told us so in chapter 1, and God said so in chapters 1 and chapter 2. So Job says, having done nothing to deserve this incredible and horrible tragedies and suffering that he's going through, it would be better if he had never been born. So we want to take a look tonight at the claim that's being made from his friends Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. So I want to read some passages to you from what they say. Now, the bulk of this book where the friends speak, it's organized like this. So Eliphaz speaks, Job responds. Bildad speaks, Job responds. Zophar speaks, Job responds. And then that cycle repeats itself 2 more times. So these are just snippets across the 3 times each of the friends speak. So we can hear what are Job's friends saying to him about what this suffering means in the world. From chapter 4. Think now, what innocent man has ever perished? Where have the upright been destroyed? As I have seen, those who plow evil and sow mischief reap them. They perish by a blast from God and gone at the breath of his nostrils. For misery does not come from the earth, nor does trouble sprout from the ground, but human beings are born to trouble just as sparks fly upward. As for me, I would seek God, and to God I would commit my cause. Will God pervert the right? Will the Almighty pervert justice? If your sons sinned against him, he dispatched them for their transgressions. You hear that? If your sons sinned against God, God killed them for their transgressions. But if you seek God and supplicate the Almighty, if you are blameless and upright, he will protect you and grant well-being to your righteous home. And you say, my doctrine is pure, and I have been innocent in your sight. But would that God might speak and talk to you himself. He would tell you the secrets of wisdom, for there are many sides to wisdom, and know that God has overlooked for you some of your iniquity. The wicked writhe in pain all their days, and through the years they are laid up for the ruthless. Terrifying sounds are in their ears. In prosperity the destroyer will come upon them. Surely the light of the wicked is put out, and the flame of their fire does not shine. The light is dark in their tent, and the lamp above them is put out. Their strong steps are shortened, and their own schemes throw them down. Their strength is consumed by hunger, and calamity is ready for their stumbling. By disease their skin is consumed. The firstborn of death consumes their limbs. The wicked will suck the poison of asps. The tongue of a viper will kill them. They will not look on the rivers, the streams flowing with honey and curds. They will give back the fruit of their toil and will not swallow it down. From the profit of their trading they will get no enjoyment, for they have crushed and abandoned the poor. They have seized a house they did not build. They will flee from an iron weapon. A bronze arrow will strike them through. Utter darkness is laid up for their treasure. A fire fanned by no one will devour them. What is left in their tent will be consumed. This is the portion of the wicked from God, a heritage decreed to them by God. And lastly, agree with God and be at peace. In this way, good will come to you. Receive instruction from his mouth and lay upon his words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be restored. If you remove unrighteousness from your tents, if you treat gold like dust and gold of Ophir like the stones of the torrent bed, and if the Almighty is your gold and your precious silver, then you will delight yourself in the Almighty and lift up your face to God. You will pray to him and he will hear you, and you will pay your vows. You will decide on a matter, and it will be established for you, and light will shine on your ways. When others are humiliated, you say it is pride, for he saves the humble. He will deliver even those who are guilty. They will escape because of the cleanness of your hands. So from these snippets of what Job's friends say to him over the course of the bulk of this book, we start to get a sense of where they are coming from, what they think about the order of the universe. So imagine a triangle with me. Okay, at the top is God. At the bottom left are human beings represented by Job, and on the bottom right is the principle of just retribution. All right, so just retribution is what Proverbs has been talking about. You get what you deserve. Those who do good get blessings from God. Those who do evil are punished by God. So here's the heart of what Job's friends are saying to him based on that triangle we're imaging together. God has indeed ordered the world by just retribution. Good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. And they say God is absolutely, without question, just. That's God's very nature and can't act in any other way. So they conclude, because the world is ordered in this way and God is just, Job must have sinned. He must have. But we know he didn't, right? We know that from the very beginning of the story. From the narrator and from God, we know that Job did nothing to deserve what's happened to him. He sits there with boils from his toes to his head. His lands are ruined, his herds are gone, his servants killed, and his children are dead. And these friends argue with Job that there must be something he did to deserve it, because that's who God is, and that's how God has ordered the world. When my birth father was dying of cancer, good Christian people told my mom that he was dying, he was not getting better, because she wasn't faithful enough. She wasn't praying hard enough. And we've heard preachers claim that devastation and death and things like Hurricane Katrina or the earthquake in Haiti were punishments by God, sent on people for their godlessness and their sin. And we too have heard well-meaning people, loving people, tell us in our own suffering things like, it's all part of God's plan. God just needed another angel. God works all things for good. You just need to turn towards God. And if you're like me, you've also heard that same voice in your own head, whispering in the midst of your suffering, I must have done something to deserve this. And if we're going to go down that line of thinking, if we're going to let Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar have the final say, then we also need to ask things like, what did the people of Ukraine do to deserve the devastation and the death and the destruction that's being visited on their country? In fact, we should really all be searching our own hearts, asking ourselves, what did we do? What could we have done to deserve something that might be leading toward a global war? But rest assured, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar do not have the final say. Another man is going to show up, Elihu, and Job. Even they will not have the final say. It will be God, at the end of the book, who reveals to us how this creation is ordered and why there is suffering, even when we do not deserve it. Because God doesn't intend for you to suffer. God doesn't intend to inflict pain on your life. You're not being punished for something you did. And God will always remain faithful to you through whatever suffering you face. Thanks be to God. Amen.